Have you ever paused for a moment to ask yourself, why do some people seem stuck in endless cycles of struggle and pain, while others walk through life with a sense of calm, purpose, and wisdom? It's not about how much they know or how successful they appear to be. It's about something deeper. In Buddhism, wisdom is not measured by external achievements or intellectual prowess. Instead, it's rooted in a profound understanding of life's impermanence and the ability to navigate its challenges with grace and clarity. Let's be honest, all of us, at one point or another, have felt lost. We've clung to ideas, resisted change, blamed others, or spoken when we should have listened. These aren't failures, they're part of the human experience. But here's the key. Recognizing these moments and learning from them is what sets us on the path toward wisdom. In Buddhist philosophy, the journey to wisdom begins with confronting avidya, ignorance. Ignorance isn't about lacking knowledge. It's about being blind to the truth of reality, to the principles of anicca, impermanence, dukkha, suffering, and anatta, non-self. This blindness manifests in behaviors that trap us in cycles of suffering, preventing us from growing and finding peace. Think of it this way. Imagine you're walking through a dense forest, unsure of the path ahead. The trees seem to close in, and every step feels uncertain. Ignorance is like that forest. It confuses and confines us. But wisdom is the light that cuts through the darkness, revealing a clear path forward. Today, we'll explore 6 signs that someone is caught in the web of ignorance. These aren't just behaviors to recognize in others. They're mirrors reflecting our own struggles. This isn't about pointing fingers or casting judgment. Instead, it's an invitation to look inward with honesty and compassion. Each sign we uncover is a chance to grow, to let go of the habits that weigh us down, and to take one step closer to enlightenment. Picture this. A traveler comes to a river with a broken bridge. He could stand there blaming the river for being in his way, or he could take the time to build a raft and cross to the other side. In the same way, these 6 signs are like the obstacles we encounter on our journey. By identifying and addressing them, we begin to construct our own raft, a vehicle to carry us beyond ignorance and into wisdom. But let's not forget, the path to wisdom is not a straight line, nor is it the same for everyone. It's a deeply personal journey, one that requires patience, effort, and self-reflection. Buddhism teaches us that every moment offers a new opportunity to choose mindfulness over distraction, compassion over judgment, and growth over stagnation. As we dive into these 6 signs, I want you to remember one thing. Wisdom is not about being perfect. It's not about never making mistakes or always having the right answer. Wisdom is about being open to learning, to admitting when we're wrong, and to seeing the world and ourselves as they truly are. This journey we're about to take isn't just theoretical, it's practical. It's meant to challenge you, inspire you, and, most importantly, empower you. Because the truth is, each of us has the capacity for wisdom within us. It's not something we're born with or something only a select few can achieve. It's a skill, a practice, a way of living that we can cultivate every day. So, are you ready to take the first step? Are you ready to shine a light on the shadows of ignorance and uncover the lessons they hold? Together, we'll explore these 6 signs, not to dwell on them, but to learn from them. Each one carries a story, a teaching, and a pathway to greater understanding. Let's walk this path with curiosity, humility, and a sense of purpose. Let's use what we discover to transform not only how we see the world, but how we live within it. And as we move forward, let's keep in mind the wisdom of the Buddha. A disciplined mind brings happiness. The journey begins now. 1. A closed mind. Building on our journey toward wisdom, the first step is recognizing the danger of a closed mind. A closed mind is like a jar with its lid tightly sealed. No fresh water of wisdom can enter. It clings to the familiar, rejecting anything that challenges its comfort zone. In Buddhist teachings, this is the antithesis of the beginner's mind, which is open, curious, and willing to embrace the unknown. A closed mind, however, is often built on a foundation of ego, pride, and fear, an unwillingness to let go of outdated beliefs and embrace the endless possibilities of growth. The Buddha illustrated this beautifully in his encounter with a proud Brahmin. The man, steeped in his own knowledge and blinded by arrogance, sought to challenge the Buddha's teachings. He approached not to learn but to assert his superiority. The Buddha, with his characteristic patience, poured tea into a cup until it overflowed. The Brahmin, astonished, exclaimed, "The cup is full." The Buddha replied, "Exactly. If your mind is full of pride, there is no room for wisdom." This simple yet profound analogy reminds us that a closed mind is not just unhelpful, it is a barrier to understanding. In our everyday lives, this same principle applies. How often do we dismiss ideas that contradict our beliefs? How often do we cling to outdated methods because they feel safe? Perhaps it's a fear of being wrong or an attachment to the comfort of familiarity. But this rigidity prevents us from evolving. It's like trying to grow a plant in a pot that's too small. The roots are stifled, and the potential for flourishing is lost. A closed mind not only limits our own growth, but also creates walls where bridges could be built, isolating us from others and new perspectives. Breaking free from the confines of a closed mind begins with practicing non-attachment. In Buddhism, non-attachment doesn't mean we abandon our beliefs entirely, but that we hold them lightly, allowing room for revision and growth. The concept of anicca, impermanence, teaches us that nothing is fixed. Just as the seasons change and rivers flow, our understanding must also adapt to the ever-shifting nature of life. Resistance to this truth only leads to frustration and stagnation, while acceptance opens the door to endless possibilities. Imagine a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble. If they approach the task with a rigid idea of what the final piece should look like, they may miss the beauty hidden within the stone. But with openness and flexibility, they can create something extraordinary. Similarly, our minds must remain open to the unexpected, ready to reshape and refine our understanding as new experiences and insights come our way. Openness does not mean gullibility or abandoning critical thinking. Instead, it means being willing to listen, to question, and to learn. It's about acknowledging that our current knowledge, no matter how vast, is always incomplete. The Dalai Lama once said, "When you talk, you are only repeating what you already know. But if you listen, you may learn something new." This wisdom challenges us to cultivate a sense of humility, to recognize that there is always more to discover, always more to understand. When we practice openness, we also cultivate compassion. A closed mind often judges harshly, dismissing anything that doesn't align with its preconceived notions. But an open mind approaches others with curiosity rather than criticism, seeking to understand rather than to dominate. This shift from judgment to empathy not only deepens our connections with others, but also enriches our own inner world. Consider the impact of an open mind in relationships. Imagine two friends having a disagreement. If one insists on being right, refusing to see the other's perspective, the relationship suffers. But if both approach the situation with openness and a willingness to understand, they create space for dialogue, resolution, and growth. This principle extends to every area of life: our work, our communities, and even our relationship with ourselves. Openness also requires courage. It's not always easy to admit that we don't have all the answers or to challenge long-held beliefs. But it is in these moments of vulnerability that we find the greatest opportunities for growth. When we let go of the need to be right, we make room for wisdom to enter. The Buddha himself exemplified this courage, inviting questions and encouraging his disciples to test his teachings against their own experiences. He understood that true wisdom is not imposed but discovered. In your own life, start by observing where your mind feels closed. Is it in conversations with others? Is it in the way you approach new ideas or challenges? When you notice resistance, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing by opening my mind? And what might I gain? Often, the answers reveal that the fear of change is far greater than the change itself. Embracing openness is not a one-time event, but a lifelong practice. It's the willingness to sit with discomfort, to explore the unfamiliar, and to approach each moment with the curiosity of a beginner. As the Zen saying goes, in the beginner's mind, There are many possibilities. In the expert's mind, there are few. By cultivating this mindset, we transform not only how we see the world, but how we engage with it. Remember, a closed mind is not a flaw, it is a habit, one that can be unlearned. And as you begin to loosen the grip of ego and fear, you'll find that the world becomes richer, more vibrant, and full of opportunities for growth. The journey to wisdom begins with this first step, opening your mind to the endless possibilities of life. 2. Constantly blaming others. Continuing the journey toward wisdom, we come to a fundamental truth of Buddhist philosophy. We are the authors of our own suffering. This idea, drawn from the second noble truth, challenges us to look inward rather than outward. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is not found in external circumstances, but within our own minds, our cravings, aversions, and ignorance. Blaming others is an all too common strategy for avoiding this truth, a temporary shield that protects us from discomfort, but ultimately keeps us trapped in cycles of suffering. Consider how easy it is to point fingers when things go wrong. A missed promotion is blamed on a biased boss. Financial struggles are attributed to a flawed economy. Broken relationships are seen as the fault of the other person. At first glance, this approach feels satisfying. It absolves us of responsibility and allows us to maintain our image of ourselves as victims of circumstance. But this satisfaction is fleeting, and beneath it lies a deeper truth. When we blame others, we give away our power to change. The Dhammapada offers a profound teaching on this topic. The Buddha said, "One who blames others has not yet found the path." This statement isn't a condemnation, but an invitation to reflect. When we direct our energy outward, fixating on what others have done wrong, we miss the opportunity to turn inward and address the real source of our suffering. Blaming is like trying to mend a leaky roof by painting over the water stains. The root cause remains untouched, and the problem persists. Let's take a moment to examine why we blame. At its core, blame arises from fear and discomfort. It's uncomfortable to admit that our choices, attitudes, or perceptions may have contributed to an undesirable outcome. Fear of inadequacy, fear of being wrong, and fear of change all play a role. Blaming others allows us to avoid these fears, but in doing so, it also prevents us from growing. By shifting the focus outward, we remain blind to the lessons that could lead to transformation. The practice of taking responsibility is central to the Buddhist concept of karma. Karma is often misunderstood as a system of cosmic punishment or reward, but in reality, it's far more empowering. Karma teaches that our actions, thoughts, and intentions shape our reality. Each choice we make plants a seed, and the fruits of those seeds become the conditions of our lives. When we stop blaming others and take ownership of our actions, we reclaim the ability to plant seeds of wisdom, compassion, and growth. Imagine someone who consistently blames their failures on others. Perhaps they lose a job and immediately fault their manager for being unfair. While this may bring temporary relief, it overlooks the possibility that their own behavior, lateness, lack of effort, or unwillingness to adapt may have played a role. By refusing to acknowledge their part, they miss the chance to learn and grow. Contrast this with someone who experiences the same situation but pauses to reflect. They might ask, "What could I have done differently? What can I learn from this?" This shift in perspective transforms the experience from a setback into a stepping stone. Taking responsibility doesn't mean being overly critical of ourselves or shouldering blame for everything that goes wrong. It's about finding balance, acknowledging our role without falling into self-judgment. The Buddha emphasized the importance of self-compassion in this process. When we approach ourselves with kindness and curiosity, we create a space where growth becomes possible. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, we can view them as opportunities to deepen our understanding. Responsibility is also liberating. When we stop blaming others, we realize that we are not powerless. We have the ability to change, to make different choices, and to create a new reality. This is the essence of empowerment in Buddhism, recognizing that while we cannot control everything, we can always control our responses. By letting go of blame, we free ourselves from the constraints of victimhood and step into the role of an active participant in our own lives. One powerful way to practice taking responsibility is through mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, allowing us to see patterns of blame as they arise. When we notice ourselves slipping into the habit of blaming, we can pause, breathe, and redirect our attention inward. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What part of this situation is within my control? These questions guide us towards self-awareness and away from the reactive cycle of blame. Another practice is to reflect on the concept of interdependence. In Buddhism, all things are interconnected. When we blame others, we often overlook the complex web of conditions that contribute to any given situation. For example, if a project at work fails, it's rarely due to one person's actions alone. Recognizing this interconnectedness helps us approach challenges with a sense of shared responsibility rather than assigning fault. Think about a time in your own life when blame took center stage. Perhaps it was an argument with a loved one, a setback at work, or a personal disappointment. Reflect on how blame influenced your perspective and what might have shifted if you had instead turned inward. This kind of reflection is not about dwelling on the past, but about cultivating the insight needed to respond differently in the future. Ultimately, the path to wisdom is paved with accountability. It requires courage to face our own shortcomings and humility to acknowledge that we are all works in progress. But in this practice lies the freedom to grow, to learn, and to transform. The Buddhist teachings remind us that we are not defined by our mistakes or the opinions of others. Instead, we are defined by how we respond, by our willingness to take responsibility and move forward with intention. The next time you catch yourself blaming someone else, take it as an opportunity to pause and reflect. What can this moment teach you? How can you use it to grow? By choosing self-awareness over blame, you begin to align with the wisdom of the Buddha and the boundless potential within yourself. In doing so, you step closer to liberation, not just from suffering but from the habits that perpetuate it. 3. Arrogance over humility. Arrogance is a heavy burden that weighs down the spirit and blinds us to the truth. It thrives on a false sense of superiority, a belief that we know better, are better, or deserve better than those around us. But this illusion only isolates us, cutting us off from genuine connection, learning, and growth. The Buddha often emphasized that humility is not just a virtue, it is a gateway to wisdom. Without it, we cannot truly see ourselves, let alone the world around us. In one teaching, the Buddha encountered a group of monks engaged in a heated debate. They were arguing over who among them was the most knowledgeable, each trying to outshine the other with their understanding of the Dharma. The Buddha, observing their behavior, gently reminded them that the path to enlightenment is not a competition. It is not about proving one's worth or knowledge to others, but about the transformation of the self. He asked them to reflect. What is the value of knowing many teachings if the heart remains untouched by humility and compassion? This lesson is as relevant today as it was then. How often do we find ourselves caught in the trap of arrogance, eager to prove our worth or defend our opinions? Whether it's in the workplace, within our relationships, or even in casual conversations, there is a subtle yet persistent desire to be seen as right, smart, or superior. But what does this really achieve? Arrogance shuts the door to learning. It prevents us from listening, from truly understanding others, and even from understanding ourselves. True humility is not about thinking less of yourself. It is about recognizing that you are part of something greater. It is about understanding that your value does not diminish when you acknowledge the strengths, ideas, or wisdom of others. Humility creates space for growth, for connection, and for wisdom to take root. In Buddhist practice, this space is cultivated through metta, or loving kindness, and mudita, or sympathetic joy. These practices remind us to approach others with kindness and to rejoice in their successes rather than feeling threatened by them. Imagine someone who is always eager to showcase their achievements, interrupting conversations to highlight their own experiences. This person might appear confident, but beneath the surface, their arrogance is often a mask for insecurity. They seek validation from others because they have not yet found it within themselves. Now, contrast this with someone who listens more than they speak. who celebrates the accomplishments of others without comparison, and who remains open to feedback and new perspectives. This person embodies humility, and as a result, they not only grow but also inspire growth in those around them. The Buddhist teachings on arrogance and humility encourage us to look inward. Why do we feel the need to assert our superiority? What are we afraid of losing if we admit that we don't know something, or that someone else might have a better idea? Often, the answer lies in the ego, a fragile construct that clings to the illusion of control and certainty. But this illusion is just that, an illusion. By letting go of arrogance, we free ourselves from the constant need to prove our worth and instead find peace in simply being. Humility also fosters deeper connections. Arrogance creates walls, while humility builds bridges. When we approach others with humility, we invite trust and understanding. We create an environment where collaboration and mutual respect can flourish. This is particularly important in relationships, where arrogance can quickly erode intimacy and trust. A humble heart, on the other hand, listens without judgment, speaks without condescension, and acts with empathy. In the Jataka tales, the Buddha shared a story about a wise king who ruled with humility. Despite his power and status, he would often disguise himself as a commoner and walk among his people to learn their struggles and needs. This king understood that true leadership is not about asserting dominance, but about serving others. His humility allowed him to rule with wisdom and compassion, earning the respect and love of his people. This story reminds us that humility is not a weakness. It is a strength. It takes courage to admit when we are wrong, to acknowledge our limitations, and to seek help when needed. It is through this courage that we grow, both as individuals and as a collective. Humility allows us to embrace life as a continual process of learning, where every experience, whether success or failure, offers a lesson. In your own life, consider how arrogance might be holding you back. Is it preventing you from learning something new? Is it creating tension in your relationships? Is it keeping you from seeing the beauty and wisdom in others? Take a moment to reflect on these questions with an open heart. Recognize that humility is not about diminishing yourself, but about expanding your perspective. The practice of humility begins with mindfulness. Pay attention to your thoughts and interactions. Notice when you feel the urge to assert your superiority or dismiss someone else's perspective. Instead of acting on this impulse, pause, take a breath. Remind yourself that everyone you encounter has something to teach you, whether through their knowledge, their experiences, or even their mistakes. As you cultivate humility, you will notice a shift, not only in how others respond to you, but in how you feel within yourself. The weight of arrogance will begin to lift, replaced by a sense of lightness and openness. You will find that humility does not diminish your value, it enhances it. By stepping back, you allow others to shine, and in doing so, you contribute to a collective light that is far greater than any one individual. Remember, the path to wisdom is not about standing above others, but walking alongside them. It is about recognizing that we are all students of life, each with our own lessons to learn and share. As the Buddha said, a person who conceits, "I am better," "I am equal," or "I am inferior," is far from the path. Let us walk the path of humility, not out of obligation, but out of the deep understanding that it is the only way to truly grow, connect, and find peace. 4. Lack of empathy. Empathy is a cornerstone of human connection, and in Buddhist philosophy, it holds an even greater significance. It is not simply about feeling for others, it is about truly understanding their experiences, stepping into their shoes, and responding with compassion. Without empathy, our relationships become transactional, stripped of depth and meaning. Life itself becomes a series of hollow interactions, devoid of the richness that genuine connection brings. Compassion, or karuna, is one of the 4 immeasurables in Buddhism, guiding us to transcend self-centeredness and embrace the suffering of others with an open heart. The transformative power of empathy is beautifully illustrated in the story of Angulimala. Once a feared and violent murderer, Angulimala lived in isolation, consumed by hatred and disconnected from humanity. When he encountered the Buddha, he expected judgment or fear. but what he received instead was compassion. The Buddha saw beyond his actions to the suffering and ignorance that drove them. By meeting Angulimala with empathy, the Buddha reached a part of him that no one else had. This profound act of understanding not only stopped Angulimala's path of destruction, but transformed him into a devoted monk, dedicated to the practice of compassion and spiritual growth. This story reminds us that empathy has the power to change lives, but its absence can create a void that isolates us from others. When we lack empathy, we fail to see the humanity in those around us. We reduce people to their mistakes or weaknesses, forgetting that their struggles often mirror our own. This disconnection not only harms others, but also impoverishes our inner world. It leaves us trapped in a cycle of judgment and alienation. Unable to experience the interconnectedness that Buddhism teaches is at the heart of existence. Practicing karuna begins with presence. How often do we truly listen when someone shares their pain? It is easy to nod along, offer a quick solution, or shift the conversation back to ourselves. But empathy requires more than surface-level acknowledgement. It calls us to pause, to set aside our own assumptions and judgments, and to be fully present with the other person's experience. This act of deep listening is transformative, not just for the one who is heard, but for the one who listens. It opens a channel of understanding that bridges the gap between individuals and allows compassion to flow freely. Empathy also involves recognizing the shared nature of suffering. The Buddha taught that dukkha, or suffering, is a universal experience. No one is exempt from pain, loss, or hardship. When we understand this, we begin to see others' struggles not as separate from our own, but as reflections of the human condition. This perspective dissolves the barriers that divide us and fosters a sense of unity. It helps us approach others with kindness, even when their actions or words challenge us. One of the greatest obstacles to empathy is the tendency to judge. It is all too easy to label someone as unkind, lazy, or undeserving without considering the context of their actions. But Buddhism teaches that judgment arises from ignorance. When we judge, we close our hearts and minds to the full complexity of a person's story. Instead, we can cultivate curiosity. What might this person be going through? What fears or insecurities are shaping their behavior? This shift from judgment to curiosity not only enhances our empathy, but also deepens our own understanding of the human experience. Empathy is not a sign of weakness. It is a profound strength. It takes courage to open ourselves to others' pain, to let their struggles touch our hearts. But in doing so, we discover a wellspring of resilience and compassion within ourselves. Empathy does not deplete us, it enriches us. It connects us to the world in a way that no material possession or achievement ever could. It reminds us of our shared humanity and the beauty of walking this path of life together. In relationships, empathy is the glue that holds us together. Without it, misunderstandings fester, conflicts escalate, and distance grows. But when we approach others with empathy, we create a foundation of trust and mutual respect. Imagine a couple in the midst of an argument. Without empathy, each person clings to their perspective, unwilling to see the other's point of view. The argument becomes a battle of egos, with no resolution in sight. But when empathy enters the equation, everything changes. Each person pauses to truly hear the other, to acknowledge their feelings and concerns. The focus shifts from winning the argument to understanding and supporting one another. This is the transformative power of empathy. Practicing karuna also extends beyond our personal relationships. It shapes how we interact with the world at large. In a society that often prioritizes individual success over collective well-being, empathy reminds us of our interconnectedness. It calls us to act with compassion toward those who are marginalized, to advocate for justice, and to contribute to the greater good. Empathy is not passive, it is active, urging us to alleviate suffering wherever we encounter it. In your own life, reflect on moments when empathy has transformed a situation. Perhaps it was a time when someone truly listened to you, offering understanding without judgment. Or maybe it was a moment when you extended compassion to someone in need, and in doing so, felt a profound sense of connection. These experiences reveal the essence of empathy. a bridge that connects us to others and to our own humanity. As you move through your day, make a conscious effort to practice empathy. Start by listening more deeply, without interruption or distraction. When you encounter someone who challenges you, pause and consider their perspective. What might they be feeling? What pain or fear might they be carrying? These small acts of empathy create ripples that extend far beyond the moment, touching lives in ways you may never fully realize. Empathy, as the Buddha taught, is not just an emotion, it is a practice, a way of being in the world. It is the foundation of a life lived with purpose, connection, and love. By cultivating karuna, we nurture not only our relationships but also our own spiritual growth. We discover that in opening our hearts to others, we open ourselves to the boundless possibilities of wisdom and peace. 5. Fear of change. Fear of change is one of the most profound barriers to growth and peace. It holds us tightly, whispering that the comfort of the familiar is safer than the uncertainty of the unknown. Buddhist philosophy, however, teaches that change, or anicca, is not something to be feared but embraced. It is the nature of all things, an unbreakable truth that governs our lives and the world around us. Clinging to the familiar, resisting change, is like trying to hold onto the riverbank while the current of life flows steadily onward. The more we cling, the more we struggle, and the further we drift from the freedom that comes with letting go. The story of Kisa Gotami beautifully illustrates this lesson. Kisa, a young mother, was devastated by the death of her only son. Unable to accept her loss, she carried his lifeless body to everyone she met, desperately seeking a cure. Finally, she came to the Buddha, pleading for his help to bring her son back to life. The Buddha, with great compassion, told her he would help, but first, she needed to bring him a mustard seed from a household untouched by death. Kisa set out on her quest, going from house to house, only to find that every family had experienced the loss of a loved one. Through this journey, she came to understand the truth of impermanence. Death is an inescapable part of life. Her grief, though deep, began to transform as she let go of her attachment and accepted the ever-changing nature of existence. This story is a powerful reminder that fear of change often stems from our attachments. We cling to people, possessions, identities, and routines, believing they define us and provide stability. But in reality, everything is temporary. Relationships evolve, circumstances shift, and even our own bodies are in constant flux. When we resist this truth, we create suffering for ourselves. Fear of change is not just about avoiding the unknown. It's about avoiding the reality of life itself. Consider how this fear manifests in daily life. It might be the reluctance to leave a job that no longer fulfills you, the hesitation to end a toxic relationship, or the resistance to moving to a new city for better opportunities. The common thread in all these scenarios is the clinging to what feels safe, even when it no longer serves us. This fear whispers, "What if the new path is worse? What if I fail?" But as long as we remain paralyzed by these questions, we close ourselves off to the possibilities that change can bring. Buddhism invites us to face this fear with mindfulness. By observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment, we can begin to understand the roots of our resistance. What are we truly afraid of? Often, it is not the change itself, but the loss of control that accompanies it. Change reminds us that we are not the masters of the universe, and this can feel unsettling. But mindfulness helps us see that while we cannot control the flow of life, we can control how we respond to it. This shift in perspective transforms change from a threat into an opportunity for growth. Gratitude is another powerful tool in navigating change. When we practice gratitude, we learn to appreciate the present moment for what it is, without clinging to it or fearing its end. Gratitude teaches us to see the beauty in impermanence. The cherry blossoms that bloom for only a few weeks each year are cherished precisely because they are fleeting. In the same way, the moments and experiences in our lives become more precious when we accept their impermanence. It's important to remember that embracing change does not mean denying the emotions that come with it. Fear, sadness, and uncertainty are natural responses to loss and transition. The Buddha never taught that we should suppress these feelings, but that we should meet them with compassion. By acknowledging our emotions without becoming attached to them, we allow them to flow through us like waves, rising and falling without pulling us under. Change also holds the potential for renewal and transformation. Just as a caterpillar must shed its old form to become a butterfly, we too must let go of what no longer serves us to step into something new. This process can be painful, but it is also deeply liberating. Each time we embrace change, we grow stronger, more adaptable, and more attuned to the rhythms of life. We begin to see that every ending carries within it the seeds of a new beginning. Imagine someone who clings tightly to the past, a person who spends their days reminiscing about the good old days while resisting the present. Their fear of change keeps them locked in a prison of nostalgia, unable to fully engage with the life unfolding before them. Now picture someone who approaches change with openness and curiosity. They may feel fear, but they do not let it stop them. Instead, they step forward, trusting that whatever lies ahead will bring new lessons, experiences, and opportunities for growth. Which of these people do you think lives with greater peace and fulfillment? The practice of embracing change also strengthens our resilience. Life is unpredictable, filled with joys and challenges that we cannot always foresee. When we cultivate an acceptance of impermanence, we develop the inner strength to face these uncertainties with grace. We learn that while we cannot control the waves of life, we can learn to surf them. In your own life, take a moment to reflect on how fear of change might be holding you back. Is there something you are clinging to? A relationship? A belief? A routine that no longer serves you? What might you gain by letting go? Change is not something to fear. It is something to honor. It is the force that propels us forward, shaping us into the people we are meant to become. As the Buddha taught, the river of life flows endlessly. We can fight against the current, clinging to the riverbank in a futile attempt to stay still, or we can let go, allowing the current to carry us forward into the unknown. The choice is ours. By practicing mindfulness, gratitude, and compassion, we can face change not with fear but with courage and trust. In doing so, we free ourselves to experience life fully, savoring its beauty and embracing its impermanence. 6. Talking more than listening. In the journey toward wisdom, one of the most overlooked yet transformative practices is the art of listening. The Buddha often emphasized the profound value of silence and deep listening, teaching that true understanding arises not from the noise of constant speaking, but from the quiet observation of the world around us. Wisdom, he reminded us, is not found in trying to dominate a conversation or impress others with our knowledge, but in the ability to absorb, reflect, and truly connect. In one memorable teaching, the Buddha asked a particularly talkative disciple to observe a bowl of water. The disciple, curious but unaware of the lesson to come, noticed that the water was cloudy from constant stirring. Only when the water was left undisturbed did it become clear, reflecting the surrounding light with perfect stillness. The Buddha explained that this was a metaphor for the restless mind. When we constantly speak without pause or reflection, our thoughts and words are like the stirring of the water, clouding clarity, obscuring wisdom, and preventing us from seeing the truth. Listening, then, is more than an act of politeness. It is a profound practice of mindfulness. When we truly listen, we move beyond surface-level interactions and enter a space of deep connection with others. We begin to hear not only the words being spoken but the emotions, intentions, and unspoken truths that lie beneath. This kind of listening requires patience, humility, and an open heart. It asks us to set aside our own agendas, judgments, and need to respond, allowing us to be fully present with the person before us. In our fast-paced world, the value of listening is often overshadowed by the desire to be heard. We've all experienced conversations where we're merely waiting for our turn to speak, crafting responses in our minds while the other person is still talking. This habit, while common, creates a barrier to genuine connection. It prioritizes our own voice over the experiences of others, leaving little room for empathy or understanding. The Buddhist teachings remind us that by talking less and listening more, we not only learn from others, but also create harmony in our relationships. Consider how this practice transforms relationships. Imagine a parent and child in conversation. If the parent spends the entire time lecturing, offering advice, or sharing their own stories, the child may feel unheard and disconnected. But if the parent listens deeply, validating the child's feelings and showing genuine interest, the relationship grows stronger. This principle extends to all aspects of life, whether at work, among friends, or within a community. Listening fosters trust, dissolves conflict, and nurtures mutual respect. One of the greatest gifts we can offer someone is our full attention. When we listen mindfully, we communicate that the other person's thoughts and feelings matter. This simple act can have a profound impact, especially in moments of vulnerability. Imagine a friend sharing their struggles. If we interrupt with our own stories or rush to offer solutions, we may inadvertently diminish their experience. But if we listen without judgment, holding space for their emotions, we provide comfort, validation, and the opportunity for them to feel seen and heard. The practice of listening also deepens our understanding of the interconnectedness of all beings. In Buddhism, this interconnectedness is central to the path of wisdom. By listening, we become aware of the threads that bind us to others, recognizing that their joys, struggles, and insights are reflections of our own. This awareness cultivates compassion and reminds us that we are never truly separate from one another. Listening is not always easy. It requires us to quiet the inner chatter of our minds and resist the urge to control the conversation. This is where mindfulness becomes essential. When we notice our thoughts wandering or our impulse to interrupt, we can gently bring our focus back to the present moment. We can remind ourselves that the purpose of listening is not to respond but to understand. Over time, this practice transforms not only our relationships but also our inner world. The Buddha's teaching on the bowl of water offers another layer of insight. Just as clarity arises when the water is still, so too does wisdom emerge when we allow our minds to settle. Silence is not emptiness. It is a space where understanding can take root. By embracing moments of quiet, both in our conversations and within ourselves, we create the conditions for clarity and insight to flourish. Listening also teaches us humility. It reminds us that we do not have all the answers and that there is always something to learn from others. This humility opens the door to growth. When we approach conversations with the mindset of a student rather than an expert, we invite new perspectives and insights into our lives. Even those we disagree with can become our teachers, offering opportunities to expand our understanding and challenge our assumptions. In your own life, consider how you approach conversations. Do you find yourself talking more than listening? Are you quick to share your own experiences or offer advice without fully hearing the other person? If so, take a step back. Practice pausing before you speak. Instead of focusing on what you want to say next, focus on what the other person is saying now. Notice how this shift changes the dynamic of the conversation and deepens your connection. The practice of listening is a lifelong journey. It requires patience, intention, and a willingness to grow. But the rewards are immeasurable. By listening more and speaking less, we create space for wisdom, connection, and compassion to flourish. We begin to see the world not through the narrow lens of our own perspective, but through the rich tapestry of experiences that others bring. As you reflect on this lesson, remember the clarity of the still water. Let it be a reminder that wisdom arises not from the noise of constant talking, but from the quiet strength of listening. Embrace this practice with an open heart, and you will find that the simple act of listening can transform not only your relationships, but also your understanding of the world and your place within it. As we come to the end of this journey, let us take a moment to reflect on what we've explored. These 6 signs of ignorance are not about pointing fingers or measuring the faults of others. They are mirrors, gently held up for us to see the habits, fears, and patterns that may be holding us back. Recognizing these traits within ourselves is not an act of self-criticism, but one of self-compassion. Each sign is an invitation, a door waiting to be opened, offering a path from ignorance to understanding, from blame to responsibility, and from fear to growth. The Buddhist teachings remind us that the journey to wisdom is not about achieving perfection. It is about persistence, about taking one mindful step at a time. We stumble, we learn, we grow. It is in this cycle of effort and reflection that we find the beauty of the path. There is no destination we must rush to reach. Wisdom unfolds in the journey itself, in every moment of awareness and every act of kindness. As you sit with these lessons, I invite you to ask yourself, where do these signs show up in my life? Is there a place where I can listen more deeply, approach change with greater courage, or let go of blame to embrace responsibility? These questions are not meant to overwhelm, but to inspire. Remember, change doesn't happen all at once. It begins with a single step, a step rooted in intention and carried forward by mindfulness. Imagine the ripple effect of these small, mindful steps. When we let go of arrogance, we create space for humility and connection. When we replace blame with accountability, we empower ourselves and inspire trust in others. When we open our hearts to empathy, we build bridges that span divides and deepen our understanding of the human experience. These changes, though subtle at first, have the power to transform not only our own lives, but also the lives of those around us. This journey is not one you need to walk alone. Look around you. There is a community of seekers, of individuals striving to live with greater wisdom and compassion. Together, we can support each other, learn from one another, and celebrate the progress we make, no matter how small. The Buddhist teachings are a reminder that we are all connected, that every act of mindfulness, kindness, and courage adds to the collective light we bring into the world. If these lessons have resonated with you, I encourage you to take them beyond this moment. Share them with someone who might find them meaningful. Spark a conversation about the beauty of embracing change, the power of listening, or the freedom found in taking responsibility. Let these teachings ripple outward, touching lives in ways you may not even realize. I would also love to hear your reflections. Which of these 6 signs spoke to you the most? What insights did you gain from this exploration? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Not only does your voice matter, but your perspective might be the spark of inspiration someone else needs on their journey. Let's create a space here where we uplift and encourage one another, where we share wisdom and grow together as a community. Before we part, I want to thank you for being here, for taking the time to explore these teachings and reflect on their meaning. Your willingness to engage with these ideas, to look inward and seek growth, is a testament to your courage and openness. It's not always easy to confront the habits and fears that hold us back, but the fact that you are here shows that you are already on the path to transformation. As we close, let's carry forward the warmth and insight of this journey. Take a deep breath, and with it, take in the knowledge that each step you take matters. Whether it's a small act of mindfulness or a significant shift in perspective, every effort contributes to the unfolding of your wisdom and peace. Together, let's continue walking this path, supporting each other and growing in understanding and compassion. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. If you found value in this exploration, I invite you to subscribe to the channel so we can continue learning and growing together. Like this video if it resonated with you, and don't forget to share it with others who might benefit from its message. Let's walk this path to wisdom, one mindful step at a time. I look forward to hearing from you in the comments and continuing this journey with you. Thank you, and may your path be filled with peace, clarity, and endless possibilities.